Okay, so I saw this on Twitter. It says Taylor Swift breaks Mariah Carey's record for female artists with most Billboard 200 and Hot 100 number ones combined, 25. And so whenever I read this, I was just like, we're kind of making up new records because this isn't legitimate. Like, you guys just say anything because if you wanted to just say Billboard 200 fine or Hot 100 fine, but combining it, like, this isn't even legitimate. And, people just say anything. And the quotes are obviously not agreeing with it. It's just like you guys made this stuff up. And so, kind of looking at this, I was thinking I really wanted to discuss the difference between the physical era, the digital era, and the streaming era, how that's changed the music industry and our consumption of it at large, and what the differences are with that. I feel like I've talked about this through various videos, but I wanted to make a dedicated video on this and really get to the heart of it because I feel like there's a lot of things that tie into how we got to the point where we're at. So, something I even wanted to mention in regards to the physical era, of course, you had to physically go out and buy the single that your favorite artist released. You had to go buy the album if that was something that you're interested in. You got a few singles, you hoped you liked the album, you bought it, and you hoped for the best. And it was what it was. Janet Jackson, Rhythm Nation 1814. This album had 7 songs chart within the top 5 of Billboard Hot 100. And she had a number 1 entry for 3 separate calendar years, 1989, 1990, and 1991. And so that record was 7 top 5s. It has not been achieved to this day. And I just think that that is so monumental for it to happen. And so that's kind of one of the great things about the physical era and just like so many interesting records there. So I wanted to have that moment. Something that I learned from one of my friends in regards to the physical era is that, of course, we know that you used to have your CD come out, right? And then you would have your music video and you had the radio play, you were doing performances and all those things. And he basically told me all these things would be spaced out. Like, you weren't going to do all of it at the same time. Like, you're not going to get the video and the song on radio and the physical copy of the single in one day. Like, you actually had to wait, and labels were very strategic in how they put everything out. And that was really interesting to me as well. And then there's another thing about TRL, and people used to wait hours to watch our favorite music videos, and people aren't going to do that now because you have YouTube and you can just go watch the music video that you want anyways. So there was kind of that emphasis on that. And a lot of the things that I wanted to say in regards to songs and albums back then is you didn't immediately go number 1. Elton John was the first album to go number 1. I think that was like the 70s, and that was to debut at number 1, by the way. And then Whitney was the first female artist to debut at number 1 with her second album, Whitney. This was 1987. And then the first song to debut at number 1 was Michael Jackson, 95. And then Mariah would be the first female artist to do so in 95. And then that's when it started to become more of a common occurrence. But you used to just release a song and album, you do a whole lot of promo for it, and eventually you would slowly climb up to number 1. And this happened all the time. And it really blew my mind because I'm just so used to, growing up and just seeing a song debut at number 1. I'm 23 for reference. And so that was just really cool to kind of like learn everything behind it and learn everything had to be spaced out and the effort on performance and promotion and all the effort that labels would kind of put to get you to that moment. Versus now, you immediately debut at number 1, you might stay there for a few weeks, and then you fall off. And it just happens so much in terms of singles as well. Like, the Billboard Hot 100 chart changes pretty much every week. And now, I did want to say that we do have some examples of songs and albums doing quite well even now. Like, SZA SOS was number 1 for, 10, 11 weeks. So, congratulations to her, because it's really hard to pull off now. And then, with Harry Styles, As It Was, that was number 1 for 15 weeks. So, you had to have that conversation there. And so, yeah, you had to physically go out and buy your album and listen to it. And so that is something there. Artists used to do CD signings all the time. And a Mariah Carey Music Box wouldn't happen today because she sold, 28 million copies worldwide with that album. And that just doesn't happen now because there's not as much of an emphasis on physical sales. And a lot of people are just going to go stream the album anyways or potentially buy it on iTunes. And so the numbers just break down different that way because Billboard has a certain conversion that they do in terms of how many streams the album is going to count as a physical sale. So you would just have that barrier to do, and because it's more accessible, a lot of people are just going to go that way because it's like, let me see that I like the album first to even buy it. A lot of people don't even believe in buying albums anymore. It's like, okay, I can just stream it. And I definitely relate to that because there's a lot of music that I like, but I'm not going to buy everything that I like because the money definitely adds up. So if I really like an artist and I really like the album, I will buy it. It just really depends on what the circumstances is in that regard. And so what Mariah was able to achieve in her time was really quite miraculous. 19 number 1 hits, and she has 6 number 1 albums, I believe. And so, yeah, she really had a great run. And also something is whenever you released a single, it had to be physically released in a store to chart, right? And so that's why All I Want for Christmas Is You didn't chart at the time. Billboard later changed the rules, and now it was another one of her number 1s, but back then it didn't count. Now you can chart album tracks. And so because of that, you see a lot of artists getting these easy top 10s, and then the next week they fall out of the chart. And it's like, you can't even remember what some of the songs from the album were because it's an entire fan base making a chart and not the general public. And that's certainly a problem, and I made a whole video video on that, talking about should Billboard change the rules, should they not. I can definitely see both sides of it as well. But because of that, you see artists breaking a lot of different records that older artists have achieved, and it's just like the rule book is definitely different now, and a lot of these newer songs aren't sticking around. So I think that that is part of the problem. And so, that's just part of it with the physical era. And basically, I just think that the physical era, the digital era, and the streaming era cannot be compared because it's different ways of music consumption. I feel like a lot of people would not have the success that they're having if you had to physically go and buy their music. I'm looking right at Ice Spice. I made a whole video talking about why I don't think that she's going to have longevity. It's on the channel. You can check it out. I'll link it up in the cards if I can remember. And if not, it'll also be linked down in the description and at the end of this video so you can watch it. But I just think that a lot of people, they're just going to listen to you because, okay, it's convenient. You're on my Spotify. But if I had to go buy these people in store, I'm not doing it because I don't care for your music that much. I'm not going to invest in that. And you can tell that the labels have even bought into that because the quality of the music is going down. Back then, they really more so cared about the quality of the album because people are going and spending $17 on a CD or whatever it is. And so if they're mad about how the album turned out, they're going to go try to return the album. They're going to raise a big stink about it. Now, it's just like you pay $10, you get the access to Spotify, you listen to the album, oh, it sucks. Okay, and then you move on. You have thousands of albums to listen to. Or you can get it for free on YouTube and listen to it in it that way. So it's just a lot more accessible for people. And therefore, a lot of these labels, okay, it's going to catch on with somebody. And so just release it. Like, we don't really care about the quality of the music. And I just feel like there's a bunch of songs that aren't really memorable that were number one on Billboard because the fan base pushed it up there, and just songs that I don't even think were great, and the labels don't care anymore because it's all about maximizing profit and not the quality of the music. So I think that that's something there, and we just cannot compare them. It is completely different things. And so, yes, it's impressive what Taylor Swift has done, but it's just not the same as what Mariah did. And it might sound like I'm just trying to do a whole lot of bashing on Taylor Swift, but that's not really the point. I'm just trying to open up a larger music conversation. And as I said before, I am a Taylor Swift fan. She's one of my favorite artists, but I just think it breaks so many things that I want to talk about because a lot of people, yes, I think it's really cool, the record that Taylor Swift breaks, but it's just different from how it used to be. You used to sell 300,000 copies in a week and you couldn't even get number one because you were getting blocked for weeks by somebody. And it actually happened to Mariah a time or two. Sometimes she would have her highest sales, hundreds of thousands of albums, and she still couldn't get number one because the competition was that fierce. It's a lot different now. It's a lot easier to get to number one now. But I respect the work that Taylor Swift has put into her career, into garnering a fan base. And I think most of the music that she makes is actually pretty good. So I definitely did want to say it as well. But Taylor's interesting just because when she debuted, that was a physical era. You had to go and buy albums. And she was basically even doing a million then. Red did a million first week. So that's also very impressive. And so it took her a second to kind of transition into the streaming. I heard her streaming wasn't the best at first. And now you see her 200 million streams, 300 million streams first day because people are listening to the album. She has such a large fan base, but also they're going back and listening to the rest of the catalog before they even get into the album. I believe she's about to go back on tour and she's going to incorporate the new parts into, the tour. So you also have that as well. But I mean, in respect to what artists of yesteryear used to do with promoting, like I already had discussed, everything that the labels would do, the release, you also had artists, going on all these shows and performing and doing all these concerts and stuff like that. A lot of artists don't really do that now. They put out the song, they put out the music video, and then they kind of just go, and the song is going to do how it does. And so all these things translate. I just don't think that you can easily compare it. And of course, there's going to be records that Taylor's going to break faster than certain artists just because of how the rules have changed. And I think I respect Taylor has done in the music industry, but we just have to acknowledge that there is a difference. There really is. And that's why stuff like this kind of irks me because you guys just made it up. It's a different time. We have to acknowledge that. And the consumption of music has never been easier. So that's to a lot of people's benefit and to a lot of people's detriment. I thought that I said this in the original video, and maybe I didn't, I forgot, but an important thing that I wanted to add is that album sales now are going to be different because of everything that was discussed. So Mariah has an album Music Box. It sold 28 million copies worldwide. Daydream did 11 million worldwide. That's not really going to happen now because of the way that music has changed. And, there are some diamond albums now. It's just really hard to achieve. I believe Fearless is Diamond by Taylor Swift. I believe that 1989 is Diamond by Taylor Swift. I might be off. Those might be really close, but that definitely is a change. I think for me, I just think the physical era is more impressive because you had to physically go out and actually buy the album. And so, yeah, a lot of successful albums now, like you might sell a few million copies, but yeah, some people were doing that in like 2-3 weeks. Like Michael Jackson Thriller was selling like a million every week, I believe. I think The Bodyguard was selling a million every week. So it definitely used to just be different in the consumption of an album. And another thing that I just remember that's really interesting is just like when you bought an album, you're basically playing the entire album. If you want to skip a song or two, that's up to you. But it's just interesting with the streams because there's going to be that discrepancy in the streams. So it's just really interesting to me to look at albums now and just see like how many streams an album has got over time, which tracks people are vibing with, which ones they aren't. Usually the closer is the one that kind of has the least amount of streams. But an album that I think has really done quite well in streaming is Olivia Rodrigo, her Sour album. So that had 11 songs in it, and every song has at least 100 million streams, and she got multiple songs with a billion streams. She had multiple songs that were viral on TikTok, so you can definitely release an album now and still be successful on streaming and everything. Like I said, we have the whole thing about conversion rate, and so there's something there. And with the physical sales, it is kind of coming back into style to buy vinyls. So I think that it is helping artists. And like I said, Taylor does great with her pure sales. Like she just did 1 million first week for her past album. And I think that she did that for Midnight's as well. And that's just in the pure sales. So, I mean, that's very impressive. And the way that she's really been able to do that over time, I really have to give her that kudos because I think that's very hard to do. But I think that that context also matters in this conversation. And I forgot to add that in the original video. But I just think it was so cool to learn how the music industry used to be because I'm just so used to things debuting at number one and learning that it actually, didn't used to be that way and how things used to be. It's interesting. It's interesting. So yeah, that's kind of the bigger conversation that I wanted to have and everything. For me personally, I stream a lot of stuff. I buy what I really like, and I do have a vinyl collection. I have some CDs. I buy digitally as well. Like I have Mariah Carey's entire discography on iTunes because I love her music that much. I was like, I want to buy the entire thing just to support her. But that's kind of my thoughts there. Let me know what you think in the comments. And Calvin Michaels on YouTube did a whole YouTube live about this where he was just sharing the differences, his opinions, and that's a really great in-depth discussion. I hope you enjoyed what I had to say. Let me know what you guys think in the comments, and let's continue that conversation.